we go. So welcome to Dr. Z PhD interviews. This is the place where I'm interviewing people I find interesting, inspiring, or boss. And today's special guest, we have Dee Weingarten. Is that right? Is that how you pronounce your last
Yes,
name?
you said it correctly.
Oh, great.
Weingarten.
And
Yes.
Dee is an artist and a health professional. And I'm sure you wear a lot of other hats that we'll get to talk about today. So welcome to the interviews. I'm so happy to have you here. Dee and I've known each other for a number of years now. So we're quite familiar with each other. We're friends. So happy to have you here. So to start, tell me about yourself. Share a little bit where you come from, a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to do this. And I'm so excited because, actually, I was thinking about it actually this morning. We talked about this, it seems like forever ago, and then it was before the pandemic. And so it's been like, what, almost 2 years since we made
Yes.
an agreement to let's do this interview. So I'm so excited that it's happening. I'm Dee Weingarten. I'm a nurse. I'm an artist and a really good cook. And I was born and raised in Mobile, Alabama. I'm the youngest of 5, and I started my transition in 1980, so 41 years ago. And so if you can imagine trying to do that in Mobile, Alabama without having a personal computer to do research on, but here I am today. So now I live in Los Angeles, and I'm working as a nurse, and I'm an artist when I'm not nursing. And if you can't find me there, you can probably find me in the kitchen.
Oh my God. And we were just, before we started recording, we were talking about the amazing glasses and
Yes.
how definitely people now going to see me in the same pair. Don't be surprised. This is the woman I stole the idea of. Anything that is big and round on your eyes is phenomenal. They look great on you, by the way, too. So look amazing. It's an interesting fact because I did not actually know that you transitioned 40 years ago. I know it was a while, but not 40 years. Actually, you started your transition when I was born, if we're
Yep.
disclosing our. So it's an interesting little synchronistic moment here. And I know you mostly as an artist. I know you especially as an artist with your line work, and anybody watching, definitely got to go check out your Instagram, which I'm going to link below, because your line work is to me, it's very interesting what you do with line work. So can you tell me a little bit more, how did you get into arts, and especially this particular techniques that you do with the lines?
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoy it. I've been a doodler all my life. And really, I think it's funny. I found after my mom died, going through some paperwork, I found a drawing that I did in kindergarten, and it looks very similar to some of the drawings that I do now, except it was done in crayon and it was multicolored. And I thought, well, I've just always been doodling with fine lines, even since kindergarten. I always was getting corrected and kind of chastised for drawing on the edges of my notes or test or schoolwork. Even in nursing school, it was always like, Miss Weingarten, please, you've got to quit drawing on your nurse's notes. I just have a few moments. I love connections of lines. The interesting story, how I got started a little bit. I've always been a doodler, so to speak. But when I was in 6th grade, I was really excited about kind of leaving elementary school. I was going to be a big girl and go to junior high school in 6th grade, because we got to change classes, and that was a new thing for us, and go to different classrooms, and we had some electives. And so I was so excited. I did not want to play a musical instrument. I wanted to get in the art room and take art. And I loved these fine lines and the details. There was always something about drawing something smaller so that you would kind of lean in and look at it. And I just was intrigued by that. And just the whole idea of making connections and layers. And it was a different period of time. And my art teacher really, she was very horrible. Her name was Inez, and she would call me the class queer, and she would say, you're never going to be a good artist, and your stuff is just terrible. And I remember one time she just snatched away one of my drawings, and she held it up to the class and said, she'll never be able to draw a line from point A to point B. And she just threw it onto the floor and kept right on going. Well, I was really humiliated. I was kind of embarrassed, blah, blah. And I kind of chuckle sometimes, and I use this because I've traveled and I've done a lot of talking about my art. And I said, and really basically that's what it is. It's all lines from point A to point B. So thank you, Inez. But a real quick side note on that. That was 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And of course, I didn't take art with her in the 7th and 8th grade. And then you jump to years later in your life as an adult. I'm working as a nurse, and I was a hospice nurse. And I really had the honor and privilege of being her hospice nurse and helping her have a graceful passage.
You're kidding. So you were Ein's hospice nurse?
Yeah. And so, and
Wow.
she was quite demented at that time and really didn't know who I was. But I did, and I recognized the name, and I recognized her when I came in, and there lots of artwork in our house, and I was a really different person than the girl in 6th grade. So it was just an honor, and I never said anything to her family or anybody. It was just this little kind of secret thing that you had inside that I just thought, this is so lovely,
Wow.
and it gave me an opportunity to say, which she didn't know it at the time. She wasn't, responsible to kind of hear things. And she wasn't well. She was in the process of actively dying. But I had submitted a drawing that had just flown on the last flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. And I thought to myself, you said that I would never be able to draw, and I could never draw a line from point A to point B. And I basically just sent a drawing with 5,705 lines from point A to point B on it. And it just flew on the last flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. So anyway, that's my fun little
What
story
a
about my art teacher and how that,
story.
no matter what, to be honest, there for a while, I kind of believed and thought, oh, maybe I'm not good and I shouldn't do it. And so kind of found other ways to have a creative outlet, but I always was a doodler. So the fine line work, I really began to come up more when I was doing hospice work, because I didn't really have an appropriate way to kind of really express what I was feeling and process what all was taking place, because it's such a dynamic and beautiful experience. And so I kind of began to move from just doodling and drawing on the corners of notebook paper to actually, okay, let me buy some pieces of paper and start drawing. And of course, this is some of them on the wall behind me. And that's how I got started with it. I love taking things that are kind of organic and deconstructing them a little bit. And really, it's all about connections. Some people say, oh, they look spider webby, because they're just all little lines and connections. And I realize in a lot of ways, when I would think about it, I don't really know. When I meet them maybe as a hospital nurse, I come in at the very end of their life. So I don't really know all the stories. I don't know really how they got to this point when I would walk in. But I would get to know this beautiful person and help them have a graceful passage. And so I'd kind of come home and I'd be processing and drawing. And I would think about all the different connections in their lives and how all of a sudden I show up. And it also kind of gave way to help me kind of process things that were just more personal and things about my transition and things that I just didn't really have language for.
Yeah.
That began to show a lot of my work with some real sensual images. So
Yeah,
it's been fun, and I can't stop doing it.
I was going to say that as you were telling the story, I thought, what a interesting and fascinating parallel between your art, your beginning of your art, right? Beginning with you doodling and having a teacher who tells you you're never going to get there, you're never going to be good enough, and you pursuing that and believing in yourself and becoming such an amazing artist and taking something organic and deconstructing it into a more beautiful, different form. There's such a parallel to transition too. I mean, it mirrors in a way, right? What is transition? A person starts questioning their gender, they realize what their gender is, and then there's always somebody telling them, whether it's their inner voice or literally somebody else, and somebody else could be as close as your parent, telling you you're never going to be that, you're never going to be able to transition, you're never going to be able to encompass the gender, right? And you believe when you go and you do deconstruct something out of your organic form into something that is beautiful. And I think that's just such a great parallel, how that you art. And you're talking about you doodling from point A to point B. And in a way, that's what evolution that we go through is from point A to point B. And lately, you have had this amazing self-portraits on Instagram. I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
even convey how amazing they are. People absolutely have to go on and see it. And when I'm going to be editing this, I'm going to try to get a few shots in between us
Okay.
talking, because they're so phenomenal. They're basically a close-up of your face, expressing and conveying in black and white images an emotion, an expression, a feeling. Tell me a little bit more about that. What is this about? How did they come about? What is the meaning behind them?
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk about it because it's really a love and a passion project. One, I can say just first off, it has been the most freeing and liberating and healing form of art that I've ever done in my whole life.
Mm.
And I could circle back to that. It got started because of so many frustrations, just layers and layers of frustrations. I have complex PTSD, and multiple times throughout my life, just whenever something would come up or you're trying to talk about this, or even particularly in healthcare, people just have no clue. And even people that knew of violence that had taken place or things, and they would still say, but you weren't in the military, you weren't in the service. Like, I don't understand. Or I've actually had even family members say, but that was so long ago. Haven't you moved on? I mean, you're so happy and you're working and you have a great career. And I'm like, I know, but I still have PTSD. And so it was just frustrations that had just really kind of built and built. I've even had therapists over the years that would just be honest and say, well, it's not really my specialty. I'm like, oh, but you listed on your website that trauma and PTSD, this nice little category off the side when your little search, like, here's my
You're
specialties.
talking about my pet peeve in life, and people have everything they list. Yes, I know what you're talking
And so,
about.
and then you'd make an appointment and you'd go in, and then eventually they'd be like, whoa, okay, so she's got a lot of stuff. So, and I know I bring a lot to the table with my experiences, but I'm thriving and doing great, but it really does, it many times control my life if I'm not in the best place, and I can change the wording on that. And this is what I like with this project, is to say, in the absence of joy, I have a really joyful life, and I experience joy on a day-to-day basis, joy with people and relationships, with work, with my community, even myself. But when there is an absence of joy, and I kind of evolved to learn that, because to be honest, over all of the years, I had to do so much work myself, and had to really fight and advocate, even when I was exhausted, to learn and to heal and to get better. And so I really, for myself, this is just for me, I began to back away and said, I want to redefine this, and kind of look at this. I don't really feel like I have a disorder. I have a traumatic stress response. And so I don't feel like I'm disordered. And so this is just my language. And so before everybody emails me, but that was me. That I feel like there's a calling sometimes to kind of update some of this and normalize this, but also to say, I don't really have a disorder, but I have a response.
Yes.
And I have a post-traumatic stress response. And this is what it looks like. But as long as there's joy in my life, for the most part, those demons are at bay. And so finally, it was really just out of a stomp my foot, fist clenched, the one person that really hurt when they just said, God, like, what is your deal with this? Why are you just so hung up with this? And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm just trying to tell you I have a difficult time with it. And just whatever the situation was, just trying to simply explain where I was at of this experience. And it was just like, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I thought to myself, okay, you have the ability, you have a camera, you have a creative vision. You've got to show people what you're talking about. They're not getting it. And because I kept thinking, like, am I not using the right language? So that's when I started that conversation of like, no, let's redefine this. That I have, when there's not joy in my life, and I'm not doing what's the next right thing for me, I can experience these things. And to me, they have kind of, these emotions have a little bit of like a sister relationship, because I have a very challenged relationship with my older sister. And it reminds me of that. You know, the person that cares about you, who can say, oh, you look cute. And at the same time, and it looks like you put on extra weight. that your sister could say that to you, but, no one else. So I kind of feel like sometimes these emotions kind of are a little bit like little sisters, kind of, that type
Wow.
relationship. They can kind of say things honestly, but also you can say that's rude and stop. I hope that made sense how I explained it, but
It makes sense. It sounds like the images arose out of two functions, right? One, it was your healing process. It was your way of seeing, looking at these parts of you, if you will. It's almost as if
yes,
each image is a part of you that is wounded in different way, right? And by taking the photos of those emotions, it's almost as if you're not only giving life, but engaging in some form of nonverbal dialogue with that
right,
emotion you're feeling. And then the second part of it is that it seems like you wanted to also show people what you were struggling with, who were minimizing and also really dismissing your experience and telling you
right,
just get over it, right? Because, and
right.
I agree, I think this is something that we don't get over. Complex PTSD is something, I don't even know if people cure it. I think people learn how to cope with it because it stems from so much trauma, and
Sure.
it can be so difficult. So it seems like that's where those images arose. For the viewer who doesn't know you, who comes across your Instagram, what are you hoping for them to get out of this image?
I love the interactions that I get with people. Um, it is truly a gift when someone sends me a message, and it happens frequently. And it can be an image that I shared, excuse me, earlier on in the very beginning. Um, the images are, if you haven't seen them yet, is when I was at home economics class, they taught us that one day the teacher had us lean over into a mirror and your face falls forward, and she said, this is what you're going to look like when you're 50. And it always stuck with me. And so I occasionally sometimes would take that little handheld mirror and be leaning over, and you see things like your cheeks or jowls, and you're like, gosh, I'm not going to age well. Well, now I'm in my 50s and looking great. But I also know that because I started my transition 41 years ago, it was a really different time period then. And the focus was really different. And so it was always about my life trying to make everybody feel comfortable with me being in their space, even though I was entitled to be there. I did everything to kind of make everybody comfortable for me being there. And so, makeup was always perfection, never went out of the house without makeup, always making sure hair was perfect. And it's very, very stressful. But yet that was what I did in that period of time. And so really, to be honest, I think I was in a relationship for years with a gentleman. I don't think he hardly ever saw me without makeup. I mean, it was just such like, oh, without makeup, it's going to show maybe a shadow of a beard or something,
I
or
see.
maybe they'll notice an Adam's apple and they'll think, oh, all this was an internal dialogue, and whether it was true or not, the voice was there. And so I just thought, I started out leaning over into my camera so that it would kind of just have some distortion element, my face fall forward. And I said, you know what, fuck it. Oh, sorry.
No, perfect. Go for it. Yes.
Sorry, my
And you're
apologies.
right. Fuck it.
And I
Absolutely.
just said, I'm just going to let my hair fall. And I don't care what it looks like. Because, we kind of want to do the highlights reel and have Instagram perfect lives of like, look at me. I just transitioned yesterday and yay. And I won the lottery. And, and just everything's lovely. But I thought, I'm not trying to show anything terrible. I'm just being really honest and say, this is just where I'm at right now. And sometimes when I lean over, my hair goes wild. Well, then what happened was every time I would lean over, I didn't do anything with my hair. I still never do it. However it lands, it lands. And sometimes I look at the pictures and I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like I'm even kind of aghast myself, like that is fantastic. Because they're architectural.
It's
Uh,
almost like you're in a space. I mean, it's the images
Yeah,
are,
I want
when
the
I,
hair to be this wild
yeah.
emotion to show there's a lot of energy, a lot of emotion going on. And what I'm trying to do is just demonstrate that there could be a feeling or an emotion that's involved related when there is an absence of joy, and that it may look different than what you think it should look like. Like grief and worry may look totally different. And sometimes, we think anxiety, I'm just going to be all anxious and stressed. And sometimes anxiety is I'm just smiling and happy and joyful. But a lot of times I pull up, I take all the pictures first thing in the morning. I usually take them before 9. I use natural sunlight, no studio lighting. I use a pinhole filter because I want it to be very intimate and kind of pull you in close,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're only focused on, here is a woman that has no makeup on, which actually has been really a kind of a personally liberating thing. She has no makeup on. And yep, you may see something, but yep, there it is. I don't care. And the hair, you're going to see in perfection. And I realized how much of my life was all about polished image, possibility, invisibility, blend-in ability, just make you feel comfortable. Oh yeah, she's trans, but she's well behaved, or just whatever I needed in that experience.
You bring it
So
up.
I just let it all out. I just kind of dumped out the emotional junk drawer, and I invited you to take a look at what it seems to be a very grotesque, but I find them quite really beautiful.
I agree. I
And
agree.
and they're so honest, and they're so,
Mhm.
it's really, honestly, it is truly some of the most honest and authentic work I've ever done in my life, even more so than nursing.
I have so many questions right now.
Yeah,
So, first of all, I'm going to put the images as you're talking about it. I'm going to substitute me for the images because they got to be seen,
sure.
because
Thank you.
it's so contextual. And when I first saw them, I had literal, I'm having secondary goosebumps right now talking about it because there's something about those photographs, and I love how you label them with one word emotion, right? You label them with like grief, sorrow, happiness, joy, anxiety, devotion. I think there's like a lot of different words. And there is something very emotive about it that you just cannot help, but you just immediately feel, you're just immediately there. And my question to you is, somebody might say, oh, what she's doing is so brave. I don't think it's brave. I think it's real. I see it
Yeah.
as real. I see it as realness. And you're talking about this period in your life where you had to create this presentability, if you will, right? Out of internal anxiety of how you looked. This, so you can be so poised. At what point and when did you say, no, enough? That's not me. And that's not how I see myself.
I'm not sure exactly at one point, but to be honest, it was the ending of a 10-year relationship. It was a long-term relationship, stepmom, raising kids, wife, family, all of the jail. And it was really the ending of that relationship that, to be honest, and I've had a couple of long-term relationships, but honestly, this one I thought, we probably are going to lay down next to each other in the ground. This is
Mm-hmm.
it. And it just, the separation and all of that, kind of the divorce and everything, it was terrible. And there was so much because, without skipping the details, what happened was I wasn't out to his family. And I didn't feel like I needed to be. It was not an issue. And his ex-wife outed me to his parents, and they hired someone and did a background check to confirm it. And they told everyone in the family, everyone except for his children. And they begin to dangle that over his head like a guillotine blade, like, if you don't get rid of her, we'll tell the children. And, and then they'll think that you're gay. And so, as if that's the worst thing in the world. So just real quickly, that kind of was the point. And after all the things that I've been through in life, I could not believe that after all of these years of being in these people's homes and in their lives and vacations, everything, that it had come to like this one thing about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this part of you think, like, when do you ever feel really truly like safe, that like, okay, this is who I am, I'm out to the world? I would see people that would do that, come out, make this big public announcement, and that I'd be so jealous and would want that, but I thought, no, I can't risk it, because of the kind of my origins and the time frame of when I started, and I wasn't really evolving because I was in a whole different track over here and I was doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it really started that, and that was really about 6 years ago. And then I realized that this person who did love me and care about me also was a real dream killer in regards to my art. And so I had gotten accepted. Dr. Christine Park, who's curator at the Whitney, had selected one of my drawings. I was in New York for this show. I was so excited. This was like, yes, girl, this is your moment. And we had already, the relationship had over and we're not even talking to each other. And then just all of a sudden, you could not talk to me that day. I was shining so bright. This was my moment. And I was in a cab with a dear friend on my way to the opening. And I get a text from my ex saying, I don't know why, but I just keep thinking about you. Like, I don't know what's going on. I hope you're okay. And I saw that and I just thought, the universe brought this by for me to see. You don't need this. And to be honest, I didn't reply back for 3 months, but I turned my phone off and I was like putting powder on because this was my moment. And I'd had some other really great moments. So I think it kind of really started with that when I realized that it was because it was new for me and I was very as if I'd been in a bunker. And just slowly emerging out, and you would see other people that are out and about, and everybody knew it, and they were okay. But oh no, I couldn't do that. And so finally, I was just like, this is who I am. I'm not ashamed of who I am. And if you ask me, I'm going to say yes. But I realized again how much energy I had put into hiding so much of myself and filing it away because you were to think of me as a certain way, but I have moments of anger. I have moments of frustration. I have moments of joy. I'm incredibly funny. Give me a moment and I'll have you laughing. So, I have all of these other sides of me, but I was always playing Rubik's Cube, trying to get everybody lined up so that they would be okay. And then once they all found out, I thought it was just kind of like a relief. And yet it was a grief. It was like, I'm losing something. And yet I knew intellectually I have just gained something or a door has been opened or something. But I just didn't have the language for it yet because it was just like, the person tiptoeing out of the cave, like, come on, Dee, come on, it's safe. You can come out here. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but that was my experience. Really, that was only about 6 years ago.
Perfect.
And so I'm completely wide open and a whole different person as of now.
No, it makes a perfect sense. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that because it is such an intimate and personal, painful story. And I can see how trying to be the Rubik Cube for everybody, right? Trying to align yourself, how traumatic that is too, to constantly hold yourself back so much. And how relatable it is to everybody who's watching, because a lot of viewers who are watching are doing exact same thing and they recognize they're doing, whether they're in marriages and they can't really come out because they're afraid they're going to lose a person. There's so much, I think, to an evolution of one's gender that has to do with this, I think, perverse and painful and sick notion of outsiders dangling a sense of gender over your head. So you're always like halfway in, halfway out, right? You're only in if there's all this restraint, there's all this kind of impositions people put. And I think that's very wrong. And I'm glad you realize that. But boy, what a painful existence.
But yet, it was mine, and I've had such a great life. I mean, I really have, and I mean, I've had some dynamic things that have happened. I mean, I really have had some incredible experiences. I have found myself in places where people always joke like, girl, you are the luckiest person in the world. And it's like, it's because I'm always open and responding to what's in front of me. But I also believe in about creating the kind of life that I want. And that's what I'm trying to do, like, even like with my art, is just like really show people like, you still see me like, hey, here's the fun girl, but yet here's something, I just want you to look at this. But I was going to say earlier, I get more interaction from people that are not part of the trans or non-binary community that just say, I've struggled with depression, I have trauma, I have this, and I don't know how to talk to anybody. And I just showed your pictures to and I get emotional thinking about it, but it just recently, and she said, I sit down and I scroll through your photos with my husband. And I just thought, it's emotional for me that something I did that was healing for myself, she said, here, this can help me explain. She was trying to show, and her husband was like, so you want to look like this? And she's like, no, that's how it feels.
Yeah.
You see how that looks? That's how it feels. And and it was so lovely. And then she shared with me a little bit of her story, and it's beautiful and it's healing. So I love these interactions. I am excited about, I would love at some point in time, I really want to show them all at one time. So if anybody's out there that has gallery space and would like to finance this, please call me.
Yes. And I actually, I did not know you wanted that. I do know somebody that has gallery space, and I will hook you up. So looking back at one of the things I wanted to ask you, for the viewers who are watching and who find themselves in this, in a place where they are trying to please everybody around them other than really pleasing themselves, what words of wisdom do you have for them to find a way out of the situation?
Yeah, pause, and take a deep breath. I didn't know how to be kind to myself. And when people would say, you have to be kind to yourself and be gentle to myself, I knew how to be kind to other people. It took me years to really learn and kind of cultivate and I didn't even know what being kind to myself looks like. People would say self-care, and they always would talk about manicure, pedicure. And to my mind, I'm like, that's grooming. That doesn't seem like
Yeah.
self-care. I'm learning Vietnamese with the girl because it's an exchange, hey, teach me some Vietnamese, and we've become friends, and her mom cooks food for me, and we've become friends. But that's not really like a self-care thing. It's like a friendship thing, and it's grooming. And I realized for myself, and looking around at other, particularly the friends of mine, trans women, that shopping's not really self-care. So it's like the little things that we would name off. They were ways that we filled time, or
Right.
they were hobbies, but it wasn't. So we had to learn how to really take care of ourselves. So I just want to say, be careful if you feel like you don't know how to take care of yourself. Just pause and think, like, what is the next best thing for me to do right now? And I would always wait and not take that next step or not take the next thing because I didn't want to get it wrong, or I didn't want to waste money, or I didn't want to waste time or resources, or I didn't want to embarrass myself. And so I realized, you know what, just take the next step, the next best thing that's for you right now. And I put with that the little sidebar, you don't have to worry that what your self-care is supposed to look like. And you don't have to explain or justify, hey, I'm taking care of myself. Taking care of myself sometimes means on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, I turn my phone off, and I'm not, just searching the internet. It's my power downtime. And that's been a beautiful gift to me. So there's so much wisdom and so much advice from lots and lots of people. But I just know for myself that when you're in those moments and struggling, it's okay that for so long, like myself, I let other people tell me how to be feminine and how to be a woman and how to fit in. And so it's okay that you did that. It helped you survive, and it got you to the point that you're at right now. And so I love you and I appreciate you for that, because you did that. You got it to this point. But I just want to say pause, and don't be in a real rush to hurry and move from one place to the next in your life or in general. Just kind of pause for a moment, like slow down and really just appreciate. Sometimes it's very simple to just feel your toes in the soles of your shoes and press the soles of your shoes down into the ground. And you feel, this is where I'm at right now in this very moment. I'm right here. And that's what I do. And I'll share my last little nugget on that is I have an alarm on my phone that goes off every day at 2:00. And I've learned over many years, probably now 15 years, to stop and take 2 minutes for myself at 2:00 every day. Sometimes I'm working or I'm with a patient and I can't stop that, but it's muscle memory now has kicked in. I silence the alarm and I know it gives me time to check in with myself. Is there something in my mind that I'm rehashing or can't let go of? Like a clerk that looked at me funny at the store. My brain says, girl, she's clocked you. And, and she's going to tell everybody you're trans when you leave the store. It's real easy to think, slide into that thing, and it may be brief and momentary. And then you get in a car and your favorite song's playing and it's over. Yeah. But it's a real thin film and layer that stays on you. And so I've learned that I need to kind of stop. And I kept reading all these things about productivity and
Mhm.
business. And they talked about 2 o'clock. Thought, why would I do all this research? The information and data is already out there. About 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon is when there's a lot of productivity slump and things like that. And I thought, so 2 o'clock is a really good time. 2 minutes at 2 o'clock. I'm a jingle,
Mhm.
type person. And I thought, okay, 2 minutes at 2 o'clock, I can do that. And it was funny how hard that was in the very beginning. It seemed so
I
simple
bet.
and so elementary. It's very
Mhm.
hard to stop and just take 2 minutes. And I
Mhm.
would make myself, if I'm sitting down, stand up, stretch, take a deep breath, and think, is there anything I need to let go of? And I borrowed something from another organization called HALT. And it gives me a chance to check in with myself. The little red stop sign that says HALT. I have it right here.
So
Am
great.
I hungry? Am I angry or anxious? Am I
Mhm.
lonely or am I tired? When I'm feeling just out of sorts and not in my place, just pause, halt, and
Mm.
just ask myself, check in with myself. Do I need to eat?
Yeah.
Am I feeling anxious or am I angry? But for me, the demons were how much stuff I would hang on to and could not let go of. Why did she look at me that way? And I just couldn't let it go.
Mhm.
Or did she say sir to me? What? And your immediate reaction be like, I'm going to bow up and I'm going to say something to her, like, what did you say? And then the conversation would just keep going in my mind. And so at 2 o'clock, I made an agreement with myself. You got to let it go. You've rehashed it. You've carried it. You've done it long enough. It's 2 o'clock. It's time to let it go. And I'm not always successful. I'm being honest. After all these years, sometimes I'm not always successful. But that from my heart with just pure love and joy could be some of the things I could pass on to say,
Mhm.
find out what works for you. But I suggest finding whether it's 10 minutes at 10 or 2 minutes at 2, um, stop and just check in with yourself throughout the day and realize I'm okay in this moment. I'm taking my toes. I feel the shoes. I feel the ground beneath me. This is where I'm at right here in this very present moment. Here I am. And I'm okay. And sometimes I have to fake it till I make it and say,
Mhm.
I'm okay. But I'm feeling anxious, feeling kind of nervous, smiling, look cute, have on all the right jewelry and the right goggles, but I don't feel right.
Yeah.
I'm dressed the part, but
Mhm.
internally you don't know it. And so now I know to check in with myself. And I feel that to halt and to be able to say, what is happening here? And it's okay to not have the answers. It's okay to say, I don't really know what's next, or I don't know what I'm going to do.
Mhm.
But in this moment, I'm going to pause. And I wish that I didn't learn that earlier. That would have been lovely to have learned kind of that gift of being able to learn to kind of stop and just check in with myself. But I know it now. And I have the joy of sharing it with so many different people, um, truly just to heal us and to heal
Mhm.
our community. And to anybody that's listening to this, just put an alarm in your phone to go off at 2 o'clock. And, you can name the alarm. And I put on there 2 minutes, and this is my 2 minutes. And you get to define whatever you want to do with the 2 minutes.
What a great, great advice. What a great time to also cultivate for yourself and to drop into yourself, right? Because that's essentially what you're doing. You're dropping into yourself, almost like centering and trying to figure out what's going on with you. And in a busy world today, it's so badly needed. So
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing, amazing advice. Now, throughout your personal evolution throughout gender, what did you find personally for you that was the most challenging?
Oh, by far, employment.
Mm.
Well, back in the day earlier, my first initial challenge was there was no access to information or resources because nobody had personal computers. And to be able to learn anything about how to transition, you know, I was driving 2 hours away to buy a Ziploc bag, or actually they were sandwich bags, full, little fold over sandwich before Ziploc of Premarin, a month supply, and
Oh my
driving back and
God.
taking them. My girlfriends were from high school were giving me birth control pills. You're doing everything you can, um, but
Wow.
there was no doctor you could go to. And then so
Mhm.
finally I just said, I want to do this the right way. And I went to the doctor, and so he said, well, you've been already treated, you've already been taking these. So I'll just treat you like you're going through menopause. He said, but I want to see you every month and you won't come in here. I'll just have you go in my office. I want to check in with you every 3 months. I'm going to do some blood work. And he said, and we'll just try and figure it out. So he'd go in like, well, what are you taking? I'm like, well, I've been taking 2 pills at night, 1 in the morning. He's like, well, stop that. Let's just do 1 in the morning, 1 at night, and then check in with me next month. And then we do this. So we just kept trying to figure it out. And then he called a doctor in Birmingham and talked to a doctor up there. And he said, yes, I had one of those ladies come in and see me. And I told her what you were doing. And so I was really lovely, and I was very fortunate to have Dr. James Barrett. I get a lump in my throat every time because he really saved my life. He was such a father figure in so many ways. And we had a good relationship, and we figured it out. We kind of figured out, like, this is the formula. This is before there were any guidelines or standards of care or anything. We were just kind of making it up as we go. And then you would tell another friend and then be like, oh, girl, will you go with me to the doctor appointment? So it was kind of like, that's how my kind of career in this started, was like going with girlfriends. Like I'd say, no, this is what you need to tell them when you call. And then it was always trying to, some of the big challenges not only were access to resources and employment, but the big challenges were in the very beginning was learning how to kind of translate one life to the next, or to one life to now. Because we'd go in, oh, I'm her friend, all right, we would always lie and say, this is my sister. Because then they don't have family. Oh, my sister, I drive her. We'd come up with some story that they couldn't argue around. And we'd have to sit and we'd waste time sitting around the dining room table or on the back porch, coming up with what's going to be our story. And so I'd be the leader. No, we're going to tell her I'm your sister, because they always let family in. And so I would go and I'd be the sister. And, my sister, who is completely brown, Puerto Rican skin.
Oh, wow, look at that. Art speaks for itself. Does that happen?
I was just talking about my friend, and of course she died years ago. And I think that's who just knocked that picture off the wall.
I think so too.
Oh,
and you have
gosh.
experiences as a hospice nurse, your spirits and spirit energy. Yeah.
So,
wow.
Anyway, her name was Vanessa, this lovely, beautiful Puerto Rican girl who was my sister. I think she just knocked the picture off the wall. I think so too. I'll get that later, or someone can sell it. We can mark it down 10%. And so we would go, because they always ask you these questions. It wasn't the doctor that had so much the issue. And I selected him because he had a twin brother who was gay. And I thought, well, he's got a gay brother. His gay brother's a dentist. Everybody knows he's gay. He likes his brother. I'll just kind of slide in the back door through that way. But it was the lady who made the appointment. It was the woman with her Bible and all of her cross jewelry that checked you in, that looked you up all and down and made comments and would misgender you and misname you and all kinds of things. And then you get into the office, and it would be the medical assistant, or back then it would be all LVNs, who would say, when's your last period? And I would always tell them, say, April 2nd, and you just give them a date, because they can't argue back with you. And it was just to fill the blank, put that on the chart, and keep going. All you had to do was get rid of those women,
the gatekeeper,
and then get Dr. Barrett in. And that, okay, now Dr. Barrett, she's been real good. I've been telling her what to do, and this and this and that. And I want her to get the same pills as I'm getting, So that's kind of how I got started with a little bit with kind of mentoring a little bit of people with in the community. But yeah, the earlier days, one of the biggest visible barriers, biggest of all, was always employment. Because if you got fired from a job and then you went to the next job, living in a small town, everybody was related to the next person, or they called. We had one of those sex change people up in here, and we had to drag her out with the security and had her fired. I'd worked for Thomas Hospital for 2 years, and someone outed me at work, and they fired me. But they actually had security come, and they grabbed a hold of my elbows.
Because you're so dangerous. That's right. You're so dangerous, Dee.
Paraded me through the department I worked in, all down the elevator, through the lobby, and people were lined up as if the football team is about to run on the field, with their arms crossed. These really self-righteous, religious Southern women, they can be really horrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you get hired from there, and then the next month, you leave them in the next job. one of the doctors walked in and said, they just fired a blah, blah, blah. That's a man and blah, 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 blah. I had been on the job first day for 4 hours into my very first day on the job, and they terminated me.
My
So they
God.
went to the next job. So in that 1 month, I lost 3 jobs, and then
Wow.
7 that year. So it was always hard to go and apply for a job because the applications then would always be, list the reason you left. And if you left it blank, it was always this big red flag. And it was so stressful. And then you had name issues, you had gender issues. If you left something blank, like, oh, I just accidentally left it blank, then they would make such a big deal out of it. And oh, it was horrid. It was horrid. Not being able to have the right name and the right gender and just be able to gainfully employ. And you're like, I'm talented, educated, please just let me work. And it just was not happening.
Oh my
So
God.
that was
It
really the biggest challenge, was employment.
Horrific. It sounds absolutely horrific. It honestly sounds, I mean, we live in such progressive LA. It sounds so out of some kind of, 500 year ago type of story, but it wasn't that long ago. I mean, 40 years ago is not that long ago. And it's amazing the opportunities. I know we're not there yet, but the opportunities people still have with being able to change their name, change their gender marker, being able to get transition-related services, being able to get access to hormones care. I mean, it just, what a challenge you had. In the midst of all of that, what would you say is the biggest reward stemming out of your gender evolution?
There's kind of 2 things that tie for that. One was the exact same thing. Employment was the biggest reward, because I knew they were out to fire me. And so I said, I'm going to be the best employee you've ever had. So my employee handbook, you get hired. I didn't go home and watch movies and TV and hang out with my friends. I was memorizing that handbook because they would always cite some obscure technicality. And Alabama was an employment at will state. So back then, they would just flat out tell you. The Marriott at the Grand Hotel I was working, they specifically was like, it was reported to us that you were using the women's bathroom and that you're a man. And I had 10 days worth of meetings, and they gave me a choice as I sat in a single chair and 6 men stood up in front of me, and 2 from the legal department with anyway, another company that was the original holder or owner of that kind of franchise. And they were just renting the Marriott name at that hotel. And they said, and they produced it and held it up. And it was this fluorescent orange piece of paper that had been laminated that said warning with 2 exclamation points.
Wow.
Yeah, warning. And then the outline, like for the stop sign, this bathroom is occupied by a transgendered man. And they said, if you put that on the bathroom door, you can go in because the women are complaining. Now, in this particular hotel, it was an old resort, Grand Hotel, and it only had male and female bathrooms. And they said, we did look and we did find an office in the restaurant food and beverage area that used to be a bathroom, and we could restore that to a gender neutral bathroom, and probably the whole restaurant staff wouldn't have to go 100 yards down the hall over to banquet facilities to use the bathroom. But it would cost us $6,000 in plumbing. And they just looked at me and said, a woman like you, or excuse me, a man like you is not worth that. And they said, put the sign on the door or you have to go. So I said, I will not put the sign on the door. I will continue to work here, but I just will not urinate here. And so it was just like,
wow.
But I was making really good money and I was really, really good at what I was doing. But I was like, are you kidding me? And it was very rewarding. People write, I'd have stacks of letters and things that people had written in. Oh, Dee was wonderful. She took care of our party. And they were like, we can't find anything wrong with you except you're a man dressed up as a woman. And I'm like, I'm not a man dressed up as a woman. I'm not Flip Wilson. I'm not some, they kept calling me. They said, well, we kind of would make little jokes, but I hope you don't are offended, but we were saying like, it's kind of like we have our own clinger. And Klinger was a character name of a person on a TV show back in the day called MASH. And it was about a man who was in Vietnam who would dress in women's clothing because he wanted a Section 8 mental health discharge from the Army. And I remember just being so like, this is the battle I have to deal with. And then now they want to think that I'm like, it's a mental health thing, like I'm crazy, like I'm a clinger. So I ended up leaving and I walked into a fine dining restaurant. At the time was like the best restaurant in town for fine dining besides where I was working. And I walked in and I just blurted it all out. You know, and everybody in town knows, this is who I am. But let me tell you, I'm the best person. I will be the best employee. I mean, I just went and I just marketed myself as if I had a gun to my head because I was desperate. You know, I was losing my apartment. I mean, it was just, there was, anyway. And they hired me on the spot. And in a very short amount of time, worked my way up to be the first female maitre d' in that particular town in command of a fine dining dining room. And it was thrilling because it was such a great job. So believe it or not, the thing that was the most challenging at the time also was the most life-giving and the most rewarding, because I love the theater of dining and helping people dine well and select food and wine and, you know, and I was really good at it and I loved it. So, yeah. So that.
Why isn't there a book? Why aren't you working? No, I'm serious. Your stories they're horrific. At the same time, they're surreal. At the same time, they're really stories of survivorship. And they're also a stories of not just surviving for the sake of surviving, there's also stories of standing up for yourself, which is so challenging and so hard to do, and claiming and reclaiming yourself again and again and again in a world that refuses to recognize you.
Yes.
And yet here you are.
I'm still here. You know why? And I've told people, it wasn't very sophisticated. It was truly just survival. But I also knew when I closed my eyes, what I saw, what nobody could see, was that I had such a big dream for my life. And that's why I love to tell people, pause, it's going to happen. You are going to be able to create the kind of life that you want and that you need, and the kind of life that will embrace you and support you and love you and give you everything you need to grow. You are creating that now. You just don't realize it because you're exhausted, and it's layers and layers and layers of trauma in our community. This little thin layer, stack on top of each other, of what you have to do with. But all of those efforts, I think, really should be like affirmed and held up. I see you. I see what you're doing. You really are creating that life. And you got to keep your eye on the prize. And to be honest, I think that's it. I don't know that there was a magical thing. I don't know that in my DNA I'm created anything different than anyone else. I just know that I always had such a big dream of my life that I just thought, I'll be goddamn, I'm going to let this end now. I just couldn't let it stop at this point in time. There were so many more times it would be so much easier to just throw the towel in and go, that's it, I'm out of here. Or I just don't want to fight anymore. Or as my mother said very pointedly at one time, she said, well, you could always join the circus or be a wrestler. You know, the old wrestler things back in my day as a kid growing up, you know, the little Saturday afternoon wrestling programs, you know, they were so animated, these exaggerated characters. So it just kind of felt like those were my only two options. And I realized I could have stayed and lived a very small life because, like my dear friend who I just referenced earlier, who I feel is very much here with me today, there were many people that, especially trans feminine friends that I had, that we all kind of came out together and kind of formed a little clique, that for many, they chose night jobs and what I considered a vampire lifestyle to stay out of the way. And it was survivability. They were creating their life And they didn't realize then, but they had their eye on the prize. And many of them that are still alive are doing well, or they're close to what they want to do. I just was the joy-filled, sunshine-loving, no, I want to be like everybody else. But I didn't know like that I had permission then. There wasn't a language, there wasn't a conversation, there
Mhm.
wasn't anyone really inspiring me to say, you belong, you have permission to be here. Uh, when Renee Richards wrote her book, it was as if like a Bible had just been released,
Yeah.
and the town that I lived in, I went to every single one. No bookstore would even order it to have it shipped in for me to
And
come pick
Amazon
up.
didn't exist.
Amazon didn't exist. You
Wow.
had to go to places like Books a Million and Barnes and Nobles and all the local places who said, no, 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 we're not ordering that trash. And, it's a sin. And so I remember my mom driving me all the way over to New Orleans to
To
check
get
it out, to fake a library card in New Orleans, to check it out of the library. And then that didn't work because my little plan to fake this didn't work because I was trying to use the address of the woman that I was buying hormones from out of the back of the Verdi Mart while she, in between her clients of fortune telling and tarot card reading. So I remember my mom went shopping and I sat down on the steps and read the whole entire book and then put it back. And it was as if like, what? And of course, I was expecting so much more. And her experience was completely different. But I knew when I had seen her on TV that I
Mhm.
thought, oh, wait, that's what it is. So for me, I will always use her as this touchstone of like how much visibility really does count and matter because um,
Yeah.
if Dr. Renee Richards had not been visible, I wouldn't be living this life. And that's just really the truth of the reality. Uh,
Well, you're describing what you're describing is what I call snowballing, and I suggest snowballing for everybody. And that's basically you have a little tiny snowball, and then you start adding snow to it, and it's hard, and it's not going to roll by itself, and it's the changes are unnoticeable, and you don't see them yet, and it's difficult, and you want to give up. And on top of that, like you said, there's layers of trauma you experience, and you just want to drop everything. But all of those efforts accumulate to a really big snowball. And one day it does start rolling by itself. It's still difficult. You still have to continue editing, but it does get there. The efforts do get
yeah,
there. And you're naturally good at snowballing. And sounds like you've been snowballing your life.
yeah,
And you're here. Another thing that I really want to cover today is the current work that you're doing apart from an artist. I'm not
yes,
sure. I don't think you're any longer hospice nurse, but I know that you are doing private nursing where you are offering post-op care for people who are going through gender-related surgeries.
yes,
And we know, you and I know how badly it is lacking. I have a lot of clients who are always talking to me about, not really finding somebody or who's going to go with me. How did you get into, tell me a little bit about what exactly that work entails and how did you get into that?
it's Weingarten Wellness. And I say wellness for multiple reasons, but it is truly about being wellness. It's not strictly just Weingarten post-operative care. I provide concierge nursing for people who are going through gender confirming and affirming surgeries. Um, I like I said, it started way back in the day, just kind of going with my friends to the doctor to help them navigating and hooked up. And the next thing you know, somebody goes for their gender transition. Well, at the time, that was always still just a joke. Well, nurse, come on. Even before I was a nurse, I wasn't even thinking about being a nurse, didn't even like think about it. But I was always the person that would come over and take care of these people, take care of my friends. And some of them be like, oh, there's a girl who from Biloxi and she's gonna come stay with so and so. And it's like, well, I'll come over. And a lot of this we were learning because back in the day, you'd have your surgeries, you'd be out of
Yeah.
town or out of the country, and they would just ship you back. And there was no follow up, there was no coaching, there was no teaching. So we kind of were making it up as we went along. But I also knew like just some good old basic things that you learned growing up around Southern women, just practical things of how to care for people that were sick or recovering from surgery. My mom had quite a few surgeries. And so my mom was ill. So I just kind of thought, well, it's the same model. We just do the same thing. whether
Mhm.
it's cardiac surgery or vaginoplasty. Keep your head elevated, drink plenty of water, just all of those things. So it kind of got started with that over the years with friends. But really, truly, to be honest, after I left and came out to Los Angeles, I just remember seeing postings on social media. And one of the ones that just gripped me was this gentleman had posted his whole story about how he's been working for years. I think at that point in time, it was 7 years to save money. And he shared with everybody all of the uh, efforts that he had put to save money and the life that he had lived
Yeah.
so that he could have top surgery. Um, and he was posting this in an online group here in the Los Angeles area. And I get emotional when I think about it because it was the saddest thing. And he said, does anybody have a couch that I can crash on after surgery? And I thought, you've been struggling, you've been living a very poor, small life so you can save all your money so that you can pay cash. And it was a lot of money to fly out here and have top surgery, and you have no place to stay and you have no one to care for you. And I thought to myself, I'm sitting here as a nurse and, just like, I want to come take care of this person,
Yeah.
and so I reached out and I never heard back. And that's totally fine. And then it popped up on my radar, and I just kept seeing people that were, hey, I got approved for this surgery or this procedure. Wish me luck. And then would message them, and they're like, well, no, I really don't have anybody to take care of me, but I'll be all right. I'll be all right. And I just want better for my community. I think all of us as community members should want better for our community. Ideally, I wished we could issue a report card to some of these healthcare uh, organizations and issue them failing grades, because they're making a lot of money off my community. And if we'd went and had a knee surgery, uh, they would send us home with home health nursing and physical therapy and occupational therapy. But you go and have a vaginoplasty or you go have a phalloplasty and you get nothing. And that's just BS. I just feel like the gig is up. So I've identified a need. I have the skills to be able to
Mhm.
do this. And so I realized, I think I'm just going to form this into a business, because I had a very dear friend who had facial surgery, and I took care of her. And somebody else said, hey, can you take care of me? And it just started. And I thought, let me start this as a business. The struggle I have is because I can't tell you how many people could say, hey, I'm having this surgery, or because I go back and forth between here and San Francisco. And they're like, I wish you could come and take care of me. Oh, it'd be so wonderful. I don't have anyone to go with me, but they have no money. And I also have to kind of support myself,
Of course.
So if anyone's listening and would like to pay my salary for a year, I'd be happy to just drive around like a home healthcare nurse and check on everybody. But that's the sad part of what's happening. So that's how I got started, was like, at least I can do this. And I can't fix and take care of everybody. I want the wellness part of it, that we are
Mhm.
recovering well and that we're continuing to recover well. And that we're also looking at like other kind of alternative things that, quote unquote, the cis privileged people have access to. That whole wellness. We talk about wellness, but what
Yeah.
does that mean in our community? Sometimes it's more than just getting affirming hormone treatment, or having an affirming surgery. It could be, are we looking at food as medicine? Are we really talking about
Mhm.
how to take care of ourselves and our skin? Just all the different wellness aspects. I'm sorry, kind of.
No, you're right, because wellness is more holistic. It's much more than just,
Yeah,
good health. And I agree with you. I think it's challenging because people who are needing care, post-op surgical care and wellness care, a lot of time are unable to afford to
yeah,
hire your services, right? And
right,
you also have to eat. So it's really unfortunate that this is not yes, there's a lot of surgeries not covered by insurance. Bottom surgeries, at least we know, are covered by insurances. Why is it not free into insurance services that X amount of money insurance does devote for post-op care? And that
right,
way, then you can work with providers where they notify you when somebody's going through surgery, and that insurance covers your expenses. And
Exactly.
that's you know, and you're right. When, you know, we're talking about the knee surgery, it reminded me of the knee surgery I had 3 years ago, where I was sent home and somebody did come in and check up on me. And, you know, there was this whole thing provided, and they brought in a walker and they showed me how to walk.
Exactly.
It was like the whole shebang. And you making a great parallel is absolutely true. And it's so needed. Working in this field and providing the services, right? What do you think else is really challenging for the community apart from the lack of the wellness?
As far as about like in post-op care, like what I do, or just challenges in
post-op
healthcare,
care. In
post-op care. Oh, you know, a lot of it is disseminating information properly and accurately. Um, I have people reach out to me. I love what I do because I can go into your home and your rented home, your Airbnb or a hotel room or whatever, and I take care of you. I do it all. So I do like the nursing care. I do coaching. I do exercise. I can do dilating coaching. I can teach you about your new anatomy, whether it's male or female, how to clean it, how to take care of it. Oh, what to look for. This is not. So I love doing all of this. It's incredible. It's yeah. But I think the challenge is just the people that don't have access to that. Where is that information and where is it parked and is it available? I've met a lot of the nurses that work for the surgical providers in the LA area because it's more than just the person that does surgery. It's like, who's the nurse that they have to deal with? And so I would go and meet with them and hearing their perspective on our community members and their responses, that was very eye-opening, and that's a whole other conversation. But I realized like these women, they're not really versed, and they'll tell you, you know, I talked with one of the physicians at UCLA, and I said, you know, I'm here and I'm doing some dilating coaching with this woman in the hospital, and she's like, I didn't even know you existed. And I was like, no one does practically, but then a lot of people do. But I had a great conversation with her, but then she said, you know, she works for this big medical system. Like, we're not going to contract out with you. We're not going to hire you unless you're an employee here. We're not going to do a 1099 to have you come in and teach our staff. And so
Why
at some
not?
point, that's what I kept saying. At some point in time, I think we as a community have to issue these report cards to the community to be able to say, I'm sorry, you're failing, but you're making a lot of money off of us. And so if you know me, you've heard that phrase a lot. I feel like we have a right to hold these people accountable because they are making a lot of money off our community. And then when, let's say, Trans Day of Remembrance shows up or Trans Pride, it's silent on social media, but you're cashing those checks from our insurance companies and you're making a lot of money and producing these surgeries, but you're not following through or you're not preparing them. You're giving us a little sheet, a little handout. I have people reach out to me all the time. Hey, can I text you a picture? Does this look okay? Is this an infection? Oh, my suture just burst. And I'm thinking, why aren't you calling back to your provider? And they're, you know, it is most of them, it's because they're embarrassed. And I will say, just on the trans feminine part of it, I give the props to the trans men. Trans and non-binary men, they share resources, they share binders, they hook everybody up. But it happens in small groups, very quietly with women. The women don't want anyone to know that they had a complication or that they had a side effect or some sort of complication as a result of their surgery. And I asked one lady, I said, why have you been dealing with this? You had some necrosis, you had some tissue failure, and you've been in pain and not able to have physical exercise. Sex has even been, you know, unpleasurable because you're in pain for 2 years. And they're like, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to say anything. And I don't want to discourage anyone from having surgery like I did. And I said, you're not that powerful. You know, for someone to decide your experience is not going to deter anyone from doing this, but you got to take care of yourself. And so I wished we normalized talking that there are side effects. Believe me, I got a lot of things I'd love to say about it. I'd love to teach about it, love to write about it, love to do about it. But again, it's a lot about resources at this point in time. So until I'm well resourced, but I'm going to keep just taking one bite out and one bite out. But you could always reach out to me if I can't come and take care of you, if it's a scheduling thing, I'm always available because I want better for my community, but I want us to heal better. But I also want us to kind of have those conversations where we talk about the doctor does the surgery. Why aren't we going back and pushing back? Like, hey, let's talk about this. A lot of people are saying that this is what's happening, or a lot of the guys that are having phalloplasty are kind of complaining about the same thing. They're real quick to communicate and talk amongst themselves. I find in my experience of 41 years, a lot of the trans women, they suffer in silence. And they just kind of like, well, I don't want to say anything, but for some reason feel whatever the reason is for them, feel embarrassed and don't really want to say anything.
Or I'm just so lucky that I had a surgery to begin with. And it's unfortunate. And, the unfortunate thing you're talking about is how oxymoronic the lack of care from providers is, in the sense of it's actually to their advantage to have somebody offer post-op care, because it minimizes risks, it minimizes,
Yes.
people coming back for secondary revision surgeries.
Absolutely.
It minimizes so many things. It's there's so much. It's like what I bring up is myself. Those evaluation letters that I do, it's so oxymoronic that people come to me when they're already on hormones, and yet they need psychologists to evaluate them. But in the system, a medical doctor already diagnosed them with a medical condition. So it's kind of wasting resources or putting them not in the right use, just so.
It's an old system that hasn't been updated. And it's like, here's the box. You got to put everything in this box. And this is all we do. Well, everything didn't fit in there. And so no one is saying, maybe we need to redefine things, or maybe we need to expand or change, because it's beyond just having complications and doing well. It's learning how to communicate with your surgeon. I had someone reach out to me that said they were 2 weeks away from having FFS and multiple procedures. And they said I would have, the quote was, they said I would have a liquid diet for 10 days to 2 weeks. Why is that? And I remember just like holding my breath thinking, oh my heavens, you're about to have FFS and you don't even understand why you're going to have a liquid diet for 2 weeks. And so those type things are kind of frustrating to me. I also, my God, can we just for once put an end to this effing thing that you have to weigh under 200 pounds to have surgery, and the stress that causes people? I went for a consult with a surgeon, and do you know, he just said, what do you weigh? And I just thought, I'm just going to test it. At the time, I weighed 209 pounds. And I said, I weighed 181. He just broke down 181 and went to the next question. But yet, everything else up to that point had been browbeating. You have to be under 200 pounds. You have to be under 200 pounds. This surgeon also told me you need to lose a little bit of weight, and then offered me a C's candy in all of this. A C's candy, which who's going to turn down a C's candy?
Oh,
but he offered me one after he just got through telling me I need to lose weight.
You need to stop smoking, but here's a cigarette.
Yes. Or would you like to smoke a pipe? So it's those type things. It's the weight thing really just grinds at me. And I see people that are like, I'm trying to lose this weight and I can't lose this weight, so I can't have surgery. And I just realized, like, honey, you weigh 275. It's going to take you a long time. That's just science. It's not you. You're not doing it wrong. You're not a failure. And I know that you want to have this surgery. And then they move ahead and they're like, I've already gotten approved. And I'm like, but you haven't met your weight thing. And then the girl ended up still weighing the same weight that she did 2 years before the consult. She went in and had her surgery and she was fine. And I asked her, I said, just between me and you? And she said, no one ever asked me to step on the scale. But they were really strong verbally.
They're seeking to things they don't even probably themselves understand why, and they're not asking themselves to what extent is this necessary. And I agree, and that causes,
with it.
And here you are, a woman already struggling with dysphoria about your genitals. On top of that, now you're having dysphoria about your weight.
Can we just give people the right genitals? Can we just do that? And let's do that and do it well. And do it just like we would cis white woman over here in Westwood. It was just, let's get her in the hospital. She'd have this surgery and she would have a nurse come check on her. She'd have follow-up calls, all those type of things. When I got here in LA and I went around to kind of meet all the different doctors and check everybody out and this and that and see what was going on. And not at the time, 4 years ago, no one had a trans or non-binary person working in their office.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Like, what? How does this happen? So there's lots of different things, but also I think it's also time, I wish we had it and I would love to moderate it, but is a town hall meeting for our community, a needs assessment. What is it that we need in healthcare? And invite these people. When we have Trans Pride, why is Cedar's program and UCLA's program and St. John's program and these different programs, why are they not there? Oh, they are there, but okay, they're there for Trans Pride. Where are they the rest of the year? So I do have to say that, like one of the other places that I mentioned, they do a great job and they do ongoing things all throughout the year. Sorry to throw names around, but there's quite a few that just get it wrong. But they're making a lot of money off our community. So if you're in our community, if you're listening, remember that, pull that into your consciousness. They're making a lot of money off us. So
don't just take, give. My motto is,
oh, they gave me my surgery. Oh, I got breast implants.
But
oh,
that's a given.
I got top surgery and I didn't have to pay.
But that's a given. That's a skill set that you pay for. That just, you know what I mean? That's completely different thing.
You get the whole experience. You're worth the whole experience. You're worth, you deserve. And I'm so sorry that you did not get the right experience. I'm so sorry. It's not right. I'm sorry that you had a complication. I could cry for 2 hours at the times when I read messages of people, they're flying in from out of town and they want me to play quote unquote mother and just go be with them to check them in, hold their hand and go to surgery and be there in recovery. And honestly, I lose count of how much that happens. They've saved their money, they've worked out something, they've hustled up a place to stay or a couch to crash on, and they're all strong. They're all survivors. I'm going to be okay. I've got insurance. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have this surgery. Girl, I got this. And I was like, I know, I feel that energy. I know that. And you've got your insurance, you've got all of these people, and you've got all your friends from Reddit to Facebook to Instagram, but you deserve so much more. And so honestly, those are the things that I have a difficult time even charging people for that. Yeah. And I have people to say like, I'll pay you. I do, because it's, to me, that's just such a love gift. What a simple gift of my time for the community. But that happens a lot. Because their family's not here. And I know what it's like. I know what it's like to move on and to go on through life and know that you have no family support. And to know that, they don't speak to you. It happens, but my family didn't speak to me for 20 years.
I know, and you're also, and God bless your heart, but you're also human and you also need to eat and you also need to take care of yourself. And even if you were able to do free service all the time, that doesn't change what needs to be changed. And what needs to be changed is that there has to be a give and take. The provider has to, if they're going to be providing services that need so much hands-on post-op care, they need to oversee it and find a way to oversee it. Bill a code for post-op care to insurance. I'm sure there's a way to be able to do it and to find a way to do it. And it goes back to the providers, and it has to be, it has to be give and take. You have to give something back. And something back for provider, it doesn't have to be your free time holding somebody's hand, but it could be just advocate for your patients and get those resources covered.
Or like I mentioned to one doctor, just please, can you get me in the room? You're on staff. I said, can you get me on the phone with these people? So he actually did that. And he made some emails and he made some calls and we had a conference call and looped me with the person. And it just came down to some little thing. Well, you're not a Cedars employee. So I'm like, okay, well then why don't you hire me? That type of thing. Like, then why don't you hire me? And even this doctor, I don't mind saying it, Dr. Ray, I just love him. And he just said, I wished we had someone like you working in our program.
Hire me.
Hire me.
Yeah. Go to the department and say, I need her. I need her as a staff.
And so you keep following up with emails and following up with phone calls. I kept making myself available. And then I really kept trying to squeeze this for every little thing, thinking, yes, this is going to happen. And it just never went anywhere, never developed. But I learned now to ask. I'm just being really frank. You've got the MD behind your name. You can pick up on the phone. They're going to say, hey, Ed, and you get me in that room. I'll take it from there. And I've done everything that I can
Mhm.
on this part. It just did not happen with this particular company. So yeah, so anyway, I'm doing this privately. I would love it, if there were more people that wanted to do this. I would love to have my own house. You could come stay at this Dee's recovery house. I kind of think that's what I'd call it, but and so that you could pay and you could come and you could stay, and it's a little bit easier.
Mhm.
And it also saves some money, so you don't have to pay for a rental or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's something that, these major companies that have made a lot of money off our community over all these years, these are some people that actually could contribute to that.
Yeah.
It could kick into that. And there's a lot of real estate, and there's a lot of property around town somewhere. So somebody may have a house or a place that could be used, or that would say, sure, we'll help. I'm always hoping that will happen. Somebody will show up and say, yes, I want to do that. And like I
Mhm.
said, I've always got big, big, big dreams. I can accept a smaller answer, but I always have big, huge questions and big, huge dreams.
But
But
your dreams got you here, and
yeah,
here you at. And this is actually, I was thinking, interviews are going to be 40 minutes to an hour, because around an hour people cap out. But with you, clearly, we can go on and on and on and discuss so many multifaceted subjects and so many things. To wrap this up today, I want to ask you, right now in your life, what are you the most looking forward to?
oh, um, you mentioned a book. So it's not really a book about my story, but yeah, I'm actually writing like a wellness book for our community. Yeah,
Good for
it's
you.
time. It's time. It's very specific. I really, the things that I'm so excited about in my life right now are like living really, really well. And that doesn't mean shopping at Neiman's. It means, eating well, learning about skin protection, learning how to stay out of the sun, learning about proper diet,
Mm,
using food as medicine, and realizing, hey, with the gender affirming hormones that I take, I might need this supplement,
right.
and so these are the things that I know in nursing, and I've shared with my friends, and I realized I'm putting it all together. And some of these include recipes, and it's kind of about 75% of it is going to be basically my smoothie recipe book for healing and recovery, but also just addressing things that are very tailored and specific, sharing uh, professionally edited medical things that are related
Mhm.
to recovery and wellness, to help you live your best life. It's just a tool. I want everyone to shine and to live their best lives, and go on and do great things. But I want our community to do really, really well. You know, I just don't want only the privileged people to go and sit down and get a vitamin infusion bag. I want our community to have access to that. I'm a nurse. I want to have my own place where you can come in and you get a vitamin infusion bag, just like the rich girl in somewhere else.
Mhm.
That it's not just for one group. These things seem to kind of circle around our community and never quite come through on that whole
Mm,
wellness, taking care of your skin, taking care of your body, taking care of this, taking care of that, eye health. I even talked to a dentist that was willing to, provide some dental health information, because sometimes that's a very big issue for people
yeah.
to get that close up on your face if you're worried about, oh, maybe they might see an Adam's
Mhm.
apple or this, or in something like medical records. So lots of different things that I think we could address. And there are people out there that are willing to lend information and resources. Again, I just need deep pockets. So if you're listening today and you're incredibly wealthy, please just reach out and give me a call. But yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'd like for this to just, I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I'm just going to do it. I've been talking about it, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to park it and set it out there. My goal is to be finished with everything by Thanksgiving, and I'm going to self-publish. I'm going to do it myself. I had a patient who had written about 6 books, and several were New York Times bestsellers. And she just filled my brain with all kinds of things. She said, okay, let's go to school. And I got out my phone and started making notes. And she said, you need to do this, need to do this. And she basically gave me a master class over 3 days.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like, thank you. Yeah, and then even gave me a tip and even sent me cupcakes. And said it was such a pleasure to share my passion with someone who has equal passion.
Oh, wow.
And it
How
was really
incredible.
exciting. So that's what I am the most passionate about at the moment.
I'm very, very excited for you. I want a copy of the book. I'm going to buy
Yes,
the
you
copy
need
of
it.
the book. I'm really excited for you publishing it. I think it's very much needed. I think the work you're doing very much needed. And I'm really, really grateful you took time out of your day today to speak with me today, because everything you said and shared is so valuable, and it's going to be so helpful to anybody watching this. So I'm really grateful and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm so grateful. So much to say. I will keep it very simple and to say thank you. Please, when you get home tonight, give Freud a big, huge kiss and snuggle on the cheeks for me.
I will. I'm going to steal those glasses. So next time you see me, don't be surprised if we look alike.
Yeah, they come in multiple colors. Get you some goggles today and change your life. But remember, 2 minutes at 2 o'clock. You're worth 2 minutes. You are worth 2 minutes.
You're so inspiring. I
Yeah.
love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I had a blast. This was a lot of fun. My air conditioner's gone out, so I've been sweating through the whole thing, but I enjoyed it.
You look good. You look good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.